continue with covering Roy Walford and the CRON diet, calorie restriction with optimal nutrition. I thought this was an interesting article here. Caloric restriction increases lifespan but affects brain integrity in gray mouse lemur primates. What's interesting is it seems to shrink gray matter a bit, but increase white matter. So let's see if I can get right down to that. So caloric restriction ameliorates health and extends lifespan. As expected, calorie-restricted animals consistently exhibit lower body mass than the control animals, and the difference stabilized to 28% or under 28% after 4 years of treatment. After 4 years of caloric restriction or controlled diet, respectively, linear mixed effect. Effect of moderate caloric restriction on body mass, lifespan, age-associated pathologies in mouse lemurs, a mean body mass of male mouse lemurs at the indicated times of the... Okay, caloric restriction had a strong positive effect on mouse lemur lifespan, meaning it definitely extends lifespan. At the cutoff date of the present study, none of the 15 animals on the control diet had survived, whereas 7 of the 19 calorie-restricted animals were still alive. Median survival times were 6.4 to 9.6 years for control and calorie-restricted animals, respectively, which corresponds to a 50% increase in median lifespan. Also, 7 calorie-restricted animals reached 13 years of age, which is far beyond the maximal lifespan of 12 years reported in our breeding colony, meaning their breeding colony, not mine, of course, and 11 years reported in the control animals. The increased lifespan of calorie-restricted individuals was accompanied by lower incidence of age-related pathology such as cancer and chronic nephritis, meaning issues with the kidneys. Okay, so 33.3% of deaths were attributed to these diseases in the calorie-restricted group compared to 73.3% of deaths in the control group. Also, the mortality rate with age-related diseases was 60% lower under calorie restriction compared to control animals. However, calorie restriction did not decrease age-associated ocular diseases that involve 50 and 40% of controls and calorie-restricted animals over 9 years. Now, keep in mind, there are certain supplements that can help with that, such as, of course, vitamin C, alpha-lipoic acid, zeaxanthin, lutein. These things can help with that. And keep in mind also, I am not a nutritionist, I am not a dietitian, I am not a nurse practitioner, I am not a physician, I am not a registered nurse, I am not an LPN, I am nothing like that, I have no medical knowledge, I am not a medical professional. So this video is for entertainment purposes only. Caloric restriction did not alter motor and cognitive abilities. So it did not alter the motor or cognitive abilities, meaning they could still move around appropriately and they could still think appropriately. Although caloric restriction has been reported to protect against many aspects of brain aging in mammals, deleterious effects of caloric restriction on cognitive performance have been reported for rats and for cerebral and emotional functions in humans. Here, cognitive performances were assessed by testing spatial and working memories using the Barnes-Maze task and the spontaneous alteration task. Age did not affect performance on Barnes-Maze test, while scores in the spontaneous alteration test were decreased over years. However, performances in the Barnes-Maze test were not different between control and calorie-restricted animals. Similarly, the spontaneous alternation test did not reveal any difference between control and calorie-restricted animals. In several transversal studies, they reported that age-related cognitive changes detected with the tasks used in the current study. One possible explanation for the lack of aging effects detected here is the occurrence of practice effect that prevented detection of age, meaning these animals were continually given these things, so they may have become better at doing these things because they were doing them so often. Motor performances, which are important for physical independence and healthy aging in humans, were assessed in the accelerated Rotor rod task and control in calorie-restricted animals exhibit similar motor abilities, with no effect of age in both groups. Caloric restriction accelerates gray matter atrophy, which is interesting. In humans and non-human primates, including mouse lemurs, aging induces a cerebral atrophy that is associated with cognitive impairments. When I start covering certain recipes, I'm going to get into why the consumption of certain foods, such as foods that are high in omega-3 fatty acids and things like that, are important to help brain health. However, this atrophy was rescued by caloric restriction. Some brain regions in rhesus monkeys for both white and gray matter, serial magnetic resonance imaging of both of mouse lemur brains was performed. So it was rescued in the rhesus monkeys, but in the mouse lemur brains was performed once a year for 4 years, beginning at age 7, plus 2 years. Vauxhall-based after 4 years of treatment revealed small regions with lower gray matter volumes in calorie-restricted animals as compared to control. The atrophied regions concerned mainly the temporal areas and the entorhinal cortex. Over the subsequent 4 years, caloric restrictions significantly increased the aging-associated atrophy in several other brain regions, including the hippocampus and retrosplenial cortex. This indicated a stronger reduction of gray matter volume with age in caloric restricted group as compared to control animals, which is contradictory to previous report in rhesus macaques. Also, evaluation within the group. So I would say that this needs to be reproduced again to see if it really works, but the problem is these are long-lived animals. Revealed that age-related gray matter atrophy occurred in widespread brain regions in calorie-restricted animals, including the hippocampus, while only few regions such as the septum and amygdala were atrophied in control animals. I'm wondering if this could also have to do with the age that the calorie-restricted animals reached as opposed to the others. They did not detect any difference in white matter volume between control and calorie-restricted animals at initial imaging time. However, the slopes of age-related white matter atrophy over the subsequent 4 years showed a lower rate. So this is interesting too. It showed a lower rate of atrophy as well as in the of the calorie restricted compared to the control animals. So their white matter was preserved, but they had advanced atrophy of the gray matter, which is interesting. Evaluations of the effects in each group revealed widespread loss of white matter in most parts of the corpus callosum, the internal and external capsule, and the fimbria hippocampi of control animals. There was similar white matter atrophy in most of these regions in the calorie-restricted animals. However, the genu of the corpus callosum was spared in calorie-restricted animals. The present results provide evidence that chronic, moderate caloric restriction, when started early in adult life, can extend the lifespan of mouse lemurs by 50%. Let's repeat that. The present results provide evidence that chronic, moderate, 30%. Now remember, 12% improved the health of people drastically from the last video, if you remember that, from the calorie study. So 30% caloric restriction, when started early in adult life, can extend the lifespan of mouse lemurs by 50% and reduce the risk of age-related diseases, including cancer and chronic nephritis, meaning inflammation of the kidneys, and age-associated mortality. Although this study was conducted in males only, which might moderate the translatability of these results, they support the hypothesis that caloric restriction has important beneficial effects on lifespan and health span and lifespan in primates. Remember, humans are primates. We are primates. Okay, as it does in many animals with a shorter lifespan. The effect of age on cognitive performances was only moderate and seemed to alter short-term working memory, but not long-term spatial memory, which could be related to practice effects associated with the annual testing, meaning the practice effects, they're doing it, so it might have kept it fresh in their brain from practicing. Caloric restriction accelerated atrophy of gray matter in old mice lemurs, but preserved old animals from white matter atrophy, meaning it helps save the white matter compared to the controls. None of these effects of caloric restriction on brain atrophy were associated with changes in cognitive performances. That's important to note right there. So keep that in mind. None of these effects of caloric restriction on brain atrophy were associated with changes in cognitive performances. Overall, this study not only sheds light on a potential negative impact of caloric restriction on brain integrity that deserves more investigation, but also shows a strong positive effect of caloric restriction on enhanced physiological health, ultimately leading to increased health span and lifespan. So what the hell does somebody eat on a calorie-restricted diet? A lot of people go, I ain't eating me no rabbit food. I ain't gonna eat me no rabbit food. Now, these are examples of healthy low-calorie recipes: chicken and spinach skillet pasta, veggie and hummus sandwich, one-pan chicken parmesan pasta, skillet lemon chicken and potatoes, salmon stuffed avocados, white bean and veggie salad, chicken cutlets with sun-dried tomatoes, mozzarella, basil, and zucchini frittata, hearty chickpea and spinach stew, one-pot tomato basil pasta, easy pea and spinach carbonara, chickpea curry. Okay. Here are some more low-calorie recipes. Okay. And also keep in mind, there's plenty of recipes in Dr. Walford's books. Split pea and veggie curry. Okay. Squash and pepper risotto. Roast chicken and potato wedges. These are all linked in the description, by the way. Sweet chili prawn stir fry. Baked stuffed peppers. Butternut squash risotto. I don't know what that is. Now, the Zone diet, which is a diet by Dr. Barry Sears, PhD, I think that the Zone diet or the South Beach diet are by and large probably ideal omnivorous diets to practice the caloric restriction lifestyle, for the simple fact that they promote diets that are high in omega-3 fatty acids and micronutrients, which are going to be helpful in, protecting the brain and things of that nature, while remaining calorically restricted. So here are some Zone foods. I had to make sure this was actually the Zone diet, and it is. So grilled polenta with ham and asparagus. Noodles with chicken and Brussels sprouts. These are some of the foods you can eat while eating a calorie-restricted diet. Roasted Brussels sprouts, noce or gnocchi, or however the hell you say that. I never really learned how. And goat cheese. Roasted chicory beets and pear. I don't even know. Pepper noten. I don't know what the hell that is. Pumpkin stew with sausage. Spicy minced chicken with mango. Chicken summer rolls. Okay, so you see, these are filling foods that you can enjoy while on a calorie-restricted diet. Here's some more examples of foods that you can eat that are calorie-restricted on the Zone diet. Zone diet meal plan: breakfast, 6 egg white omelet mixed with asparagus and 2 teaspoons of olive oil, 2/3 cup slow-cooked oatmeal, 1 cup strawberries. Lunch: grilled chicken salad with 3 ounces chicken breast. Snack: 1/4 cup of low-fat cottage cheese, 1/2 cup pineapple, 1 teaspoon slivered almonds. Dinner: 5-ounce salmon. You see, this is a very filling day of food. So what does 30 days on the South Beach diet look like? Well, the foods that you're going to be enjoying much of are lean proteins, vegetables and legumes, fats, avoid high glycerides, fats, and dairy foods, nuts, others. You can drink coffee and tea, but prefer unsweetened. Okay, turkey larb, I don't know what that is. Turkey lettuce wraps, strawberry spinach salad, air fryer salmon miso glazed, shrimp Caesar salad, vegan Caesar salad, shrimp piccata, spaghetti squash lo mein, roasted garlic shrimp and asparagus, chimichurri chicken, oven roasted asparagus with lemon dill sauce, vegetarian soup and tofu or white meat chicken for serving of protein, vegetarian cabbage soup, chicken khao yellow coconut curry soup, cauliflower tabbouleh salad with tofu, chipotle shrimp with avocado sauce, zucchini noodles, almond crusted baked bruschetta chicken, grilled salmon with lemon butter sauce, roasted cauliflower chipotle tofu veggie bowl, bruschetta chicken, ratatouille stuffed zucchini boats, Greek chicken cucumber avocado salad, kimchi cauliflower fried rice, instant pot chicken tortilla soup. As you can tell, these are very filling recipes that you can have while obeying a calorie-restricted diet. Weight Watchers is another popular type of diet. It's essentially just a calorie-restricted diet. Most weight loss diets do operate off a calorie restriction, so it's very easy. Now, I do recommend the Zone diet or the South Beach diet because they are higher in the healthy fats and higher in the micronutrients, whereas Weight Watchers is mostly concerned with just calories. Weight Watchers pancakes, Weight Watchers apple oatmeal muffins, Weight Watchers 0 point. That's the one thing that drives me nuts with diets. Like the Zone diet did it too with the Zone food blocks. Just operate in calories and grams like normal everyday people. But no, they have to make these point systems that are confusing as hell. Weight Watchers pizza, Weight Watchers Parmesan chicken cutlets, Weight Watchers French bread rolls, Weight Watchers chicken salad with grapes, rosemary roasted potatoes recipe. See, you're not going to starve to death on a calorie-restricted diet, obviously. Weight Watchers zucchini corn fritters recipe, Weight Watchers beef and broccoli, Weight Watchers roasted red pepper tuna salad, Weight Watchers pasta with garlic sauce, slow cooker I almost slipped up there. Slow cooker cracked chicken, whatever the heck that is. I was going to make a joke, and unfortunately it didn't come out right. Weight Watchers chili, Weight Watchers air fryer zucchini fries recipe, Weight Watchers chicken quesadillas, Weight Watchers roasted vegetables, Weight Watchers Szechuan shrimp recipe. I hope this gives people Weight Watchers corn chowder, Weight Watchers fudge brownies. I hope this is giving people the proof that you're not going to starve to death on a calorie-restricted diet. There are many foods that you can consume on a calorie-restricted diet that are healthy, nutritious, and you're not going to just waste away into nothing or starve to death or be hungry all the time. So I'm going to continue where I left off on that one interview with Dr. Walford. I skipped a little bit of the end there, but that guy seemed to be droning off. Hopefully it picks up here, and then I'm going to continue on with another interview of his.
We were talking about the future, weren't we, and what society would be like, and the fact that maybe people at the moment don't have a particular attitude, the right attitude to society. Maybe you can explain why you think it will change when people could live longer.
There's a great deal of ageism in present society, and this will gradually be overcome. For example, it's a little bit like sexism that has been overcome, and racism, which has been partially overcome. At least people realize that sexism and racism are bad things and are trying to combat them successfully, mainly because women rose up and said, we're tired of the sexist attitude that's prevailing in society, and other races have done the same thing. So I think one of the things that will happen is that the older people, especially if they're functionally younger, will stop allowing that to happen, and it will disappear. That's one of the things that needs to supervene in the treatment of the elderly, especially the functionally active elderly. That's the main thing. This will change the attitude when people stop acquiescing into it. The man has had a long history of having to deal with the knowledge of his own.
I suppose he supports the Grey Panthers.
Physical death, and has developed various strategies of dealing with it, with his knowledge. For example, the Stoic philosophers and the hedonist philosophers used to teach that life would be boring if you lived too long. A lot of religions, of course, deal with the problem by showing there's life after death, in which case death is not too important. So the whole structure of society is geared to like not thinking about death and therefore not thinking about aging or getting old.
And I'll get more into this as I cover like Maria and Maria Konovalenko and transhumanism, about the way that society, and also Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw talk about this in their book, Life Extension, A Practical and Scientific Approach. And I'll start talking a little bit more into the psychological, the mass psychological issue that people have with thinking that death is somehow a good thing, or that we should not fear death, or some nonsense like that. Death, to quote Anton LaVey, the writer, the person that wrote the Satanic Bible, keep in mind, death is the great abstinence, life is the great indulgence. Therefore, take your most of life here and now. Okay? Keep that in mind. Death is the great abstinence. It's the abstinence. Death, when you're dead, it's finito. Everything is in life.
And this is carried over into these bad images about aging. If you look at literature, most authors in literature have a very bad image about aging and death, and some have a better image. The Grimm brothers, for example, have one of the worst images. In their stories, the old people are always horrible witches or something like that, and they prevail and suppress the younger people. But this is an ingrown trait that has come eventually, or ultimately, from this knowledge of man's physical death, and has invented all this. This will be substantially adumbrated when we really begin living longer.
Let's go wider now, Barry, sorry, because people are coming on this subject. Okay, lovely. How do you think this will affect religion? You mentioned religion, and that death is a major part, or main part of religion. How do you think that will affect religion if people can live to 120? Will they start still, at the very end of their life, start still thinking about a hereafter, possibly a life after death?
I don't think that extending lifespan will have any significant effect per se on religion. It doesn't conflict with any religious teaching as far as I know. But in any case, I don't know personally, let's say, whether there's a life after death and whether I'll find that out, say, when I'm 100 or 110. But I could just as soon wait till I'm 200 to find it out.
When people at the age, on your diet, at the age of, say, 110, towards the end of their life, what will happen that will cause them to die? Will they suddenly become very old, but for a much shorter time?
Yes, the survival curve, if it's extended, the end of the curve will be about the same. The years of, let's say, declining functional capacity or maybe the last 10 to 15 or 20 years of the lifespan now, say from 70 to 90 or 80 to 100 are declining years. These will stay about the same, but they'll occur much later.
Right. And you don't think there would be any way, still with the same lifespan, let's say 120, to actually reduce that period?
I see no particular prospect of reducing that period at the moment. Well, that period is to some extent due to disease, not just to normal aging. So you may get a more rectangularized survival curve, but rectangularizing the survival curve can be done to some extent, say by antioxidants, by exercise, and by other regimes which rectangularize the curve but don't actually extend lifespan.
Remember, antioxidants and exercising, and we're going to talk about Dr. Kenneth Cooper. I might do the videos on Dr. Kenneth Cooper after I'm done with Dr. Walford here, simply because I like where those two go. The difference is Dr. Cooper is still alive. Okay, that's what's interesting about Dr. Cooper. Although, you know, what's his face? Walford died of Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't know what role his diet may have or may not have played in that. I know that Walter Longo had stated that it may have been due to a deficiency in vitamin E, which is, again, you know, vitamin E comes from the plant oils and also from supplements, and this is one of the reasons supplementation and eating healthy oils is important.
And so if you extend lifespan by calorie restriction and also do some of these other things like exercise and not smoke and so forth, you get a better curve and squeeze those last, let's say, decrepit years into a shorter period.
Keep the same size, man. I forgot what I was going to say. No, regarding exercise and health, because there's a strange phenomenon that's happening in Britain, and I think around the world, that sportsmen, for example, are now competing. We have a champion jockey in Great Britain who's 54, and he's competing against young people. I know jockeying, you know, horse riding isn't quite the same sport as, say, playing football, but we have cricketers. We've got Borg, who's come back at 34 or whatever it is too. So we have, across a spectrum of professional sports, people in their middle age who are competing against young people at a good level. I'm not saying they're winning, but they're competing at the same sort of level, which was unheard of even maybe 10 years ago. How do you account for that? I mean, are we not, without doing anything, expanding our lifespan just naturally because we're eating better and living healthier and exercising more?
Well, on the whole, the population is increasing its average survival, but not its maximum lifespan. So that means it's healthier, but it's not actually aging at much less rate. So you get a squaring of the survival curve by the mechanisms that I said, by not smoking, by exercise, by eating a better general diet, but not really a calorically restricted diet. That will square the survival curve.
Now keep in mind, he talks about not smoking. Remember that he had a ferocious and voracious appetite for marijuana, which I think may have probably, I don't know enough about it to say it without any doubt, but I'm sure that did not help his health condition, unfortunately.
Angularize it, and the average lifespan will keep increasing. There's a limit, though, that you can get to, and probably the limit is 85. No matter how many things we do in terms of exercise and so forth, if we don't do something about the basic process of aging, average lifespan won't get beyond 85.
Yeah, going tight then. Even tight. Yeah, that's it. Lovely. A bit tighter still. That's it. You've been taking your regime for the last 4 years or so. How has it affected you? Do you feel better and fitter and healthier?
On the calorically restricted regimes, which I've been on for 4 or 5 years, yes, you have more energy and you need less sleep. Those are the two kind of objective effects that I personally feel and that other people do on this kind of a diet.
Has your mental capacity improved, do you think?
What I would say is this: do not fall for the fact that you need less sleep. Following a calorie-restricted regime might make you, it may disrupt sleep. For that, I personally take melatonin to make sure that I'm getting enough sleep. That's another reason also because I'm physically active. I nap when I can because you need to sleep to initiate certain repair mechanisms in the body.
Or hasn't, or not?
Well, the mental capacity, I think, relates to how energetic you feel generally and wide awake. So I would say mine is better, but that's hard to measure that. It's easy to measure whether you get along with less sleep.
Right. Do you do any tests on yourself to see whether you are fit?
I do a number of tests, but I don't discuss them because I don't consider myself an experiment. People try to say that I'm a personal experiment, but that's really silly. If I were to do an experiment with, say, one mouse, people would say that's not an experiment. So with one person, it's not. So I don't discuss it in terms of an experiment.
No, I wasn't suggesting it was an experiment, but do you, because you're chartering unknown waters, aren't you? You're using yourself, with yourself.
Now you just said that I'm charting unknown waters using myself, and that's an experiment, right?
As your experiment, but do you take tests just to make sure on yourself that you're not doing anything harmful?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Rather than actually doing not suggesting you make yourself an experiment. And are the indications that you obviously presumably are that you haven't done anything harmful to yourself?
Yes, I haven't done anything harmful. That's certain. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that's it.
Okay. Can I answer that or what?
Yeah, sure. Please do.
Hello? Yes, it is. Yeah, read the later book, The 120-Year Diet. Yes. The 120-Year Diet. It's 1986. Well, I can't help you with that. Yeah. You do the best you can. Yeah. Well, some of them. Twin Labs and Thompson. Yeah.
So he's clearly discussing supplement companies there, Twin Labs and Thompson.
Okay. Bye.
My presumption is he was discussing supplements with somebody that had called in asking him questions. So this guy's name is Christopher L. Rowland, and this video is going to be about essentially Dr. Walford's accidental experiment as the medical officer for Biosphere 2. Biosphere 2. That Pauly Shore movie Biodome was based off of it. So let's take a look at this video real quick.
It is we who shall know we aid. We are fearful but loving. We court what lurks in the labyrinth, pledging at all odds to make ours an honest destiny.
In the desert, 30 miles north of Tucson, lies a structure that is arguably both an architectural, engineering, and biological masterpiece. But its history, its building, its operation has been as multi-layered, as complex and troubling as the story of humankind itself, because Biosphere 2 is a man and woman-made mini-world. Consists of 7 miniaturized biomes, where biome means a community of plants and animals distinctive to a region. Altogether, these biomes cover a footprint area of 3.15 acres, or about 3 football fields.
The wild biomes of Biosphere 2 include a 20,000 square foot tropical rainforest, a 1 million gallon ocean, a grassland and thorn scrub savanna, a mangrove marsh, and a 15,000 square foot desert.
The domestic biomes include a 24,000 foot intensive agricultural biome. Intensive in the sense of maximized yearly food production per unit area of soil. And a habitat for 8 humans and for farmyard animals, goats, chickens, and pigs.
Below the various biomes lies an extensive so-called technosphere of tanks and pipes and wind machines and motherboards in symbiosis with the organic life forces of the biomes, so that together and guided by the human inhabitants who practice adaptive management, they make her go.
Biosphere 2 is like an aircraft carrier with a Garden of Eden on top and mighty machinery down below.
In the course of its 5 years of building, Biosphere 2 attracted highly favorable, indeed fascinated, worldwide attention from the media, the scientific community, European, Japanese, and Russian space agencies, as well as from NASA. It became the world's most touted science fiction adventure story, like a science fiction tale whose fiction was for real.
The original builders and operators of Biosphere 2 mostly came from a so-called synergetic group, a designation borrowing from Buckminster Fuller the concept of synergism, where the whole exceeds the sum of the parts.
It's very important to understand the importance of this Biosphere project, and that's why I'm posting this, because this is what accidentally proved caloric restriction.
The group was made up of dedicated young people who assembled on a ranch near Santa Fe, New Mexico in the 1960s. After a great deal of discussion, they became focused on building a practical working alternative to the consumer society gobbling up the natural world.
On building, in short, a society based on an ecological orientation with the earth. To live off the environment, but without destroying it.
To utilize, but at the same time refurbish, the overgrazed, exhausted grassland.
To log, but preserve and regrow the decapitated forests.
To harvest, but not exhaust, the threatened empires of the sea.
To restore the scarred and refuse-littered deserts.
To make cities livable once more. To show by personal example humankind's sustainable interaction with nature. So they built a ship on the eastern shores of San Francisco Bay, in style a Chinese junk, which they had found upon inquiry to be the most seaworthy, big-capacity sailing vessel afloat, albeit slow when beating to windward.
And in their ship, christened the Heraclitus, they set forth boldly to found the outposts of their new civilization, their synergetic civilization.
Before Biosphere 2, I and others in the Institute of Ecotechnics had developed Synergia Ranch, which is here, was one of our earliest projects. And we also developed other projects in other locations around the world, which included a conference center and farm in France, the art gallery in London, the seed plantation and station in Northwest Australia. We built the RV Heraclitus, the research vessel.
Biosphere 2, as voyage, also reflected many other famous legends and voyages.
The voyage of Jason and the Argonauts in search of the Golden Fleece, nailed high to a tree in Hittite land. An odyssey like that of Ulysses, who sailed beyond the sunset and the paths of all the western stars. Or of the Pequod's journey into the symbolism and allegory in pursuit of the white whale, Moby Dick.
Okay, this seems to be going nowhere at this point, so I'm going to skip to another interview with Dr. Walford. This video is from somebody called Barky Boggs. I'm going to hit play and put on the transcripts. This is Dr. Walford being interviewed in Biosphere 2 after the experiment. Okay?
There's a whole wilderness area right there, which is those rainforest savanna.
I got some ants, yeah. Well, this is biospherian ants are getting into my...
I was going to ask, did they introduce insects here, or they just because of the...
Insects were introduced here, yes. A wide variety from selected areas of the world. For example, to take care of the decaying matter, you need termites.
Yeah.
So termites are brought in not locally, but from Africa and Australia, wherever. And other insects from around the world. And then a lot, of course, sneaked in.
Well, it's a good little habitat for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, turn over. Oh, have you? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Right. Take a mouthful and I'll ask you a question. Could you tell me about the 1,500 calorie diet and how it affects you and what it means?
Well, it's not a particular calorie level, but you lose weight gradually on a low...
It's important to note that it is not a particular calorie level, because different people are different sizes, have different metabolisms, etc. So you have to adjust it to the individual.
Calorie diet till you're 10 to 25% below your set point. This will extend maximum lifspan if started and carried out well.
Can I interrupt you? Sorry. Just to get my question into your answer,
right.
so they don't have to use my voice. Could you say whatever,
Yes.
dietary restriction or calorie
Yes,
restriction?
okay. Well, a regime of caloric restriction leading to gradual loss in body weight till you're 10 to 25% below your set point will extend maximum lifspan and retard the rate of aging and retard the age-related decline of all measurable physiologic parameters. The immune system is kept younger longer, brain function is kept younger longer, physical activity and prowess are kept younger longer, and maximum lifespan can be extended at least in a wide variety of animals and with a high probability in man by 30, 40, 50%. This would be living to 140 to 150 years if you start young enough and do it correctly.
Change science now. In practical terms, what does the diet involve? No, not specific, but I mean just in general terms. What does the diet involve?
In practical terms, the diet involves having a high nutrient density and low calorie.
Remember how important that nutrient density is. So like the Okinawan diet, the Mediterranean diet, the Zone diet, the South Beach diet, these diets, you want to hit that nutrient density, okay? Keep that in mind.
Part of the diet. So you have as many vitamins, minerals, and so forth, and unknown, let's say.
The unknowns are things like coenzyme Q10, alpha lipoic acid, the carotenoids, the different phytonutrients. These are not unknowns anymore, and you have to keep that in mind. Also, the importance of omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids. These are not unknowns anymore, okay? This is why there are certain improvements that probably should be made by the individual undertaking such a thing. By utilizing a calorie-restricted diet, you might want to start to incorporate more modern understandings of nutrition and, of course, supplementation.
Essentials in the diet on a low-calorie level. So something like sugar, for example, which has a high calorie content but practically no nutrient value whatever, is not good for you and not in the diet.
What are the elements that you would include in the diet?
In general, the diet is high in fish and vegetables and complex carbohydrates generally wholesome food, but with some selection towards those things which are really highest in nutrient value. Broccoli, for example, is an excellent vegetable in terms of its nutrient value.
Say something. How many calories would a man, to follow the diet, what's the optimal calories per day for a man and for a woman?
The amount of calories that one should take as an individual varies with his genetic background and so forth, but it's around 1,500 to 1,800 calories a day. And on that, most people will gradually lose weight and stabilize at a lower weight.
Would that be for men and women? There's no difference for women in how many calories for women?
There's no difference between men and women except in the size, so a big woman would take, let's say, more than a small man, but it's not the sexual orientation, it's by weight.
Is it?
Wow, that's back when sexual orientation actually meant something real.
If the optimum is 1,500 to 1,800 calories, that's what percentage lower is that lower than the recommended average for a person now?
The recommended amount on the average is about 2,500 or 2,600 calories, so it's about 800 calories less than the usual intake. Of course, some people take a great deal more. Football players will take 5,000 to 10,000 calories a day, but that's an extreme physical exercise.
Would it be, do you find it a difficult thing to keep to this diet?
The diet is not difficult. It's no more difficult, say, than being on a vegetarian diet. It's not vegetarian, particularly, but it's about that level of trouble.
And would it be, you said before when we met in UCLA that it was undernutrition rather than malnutrition. I wonder if we could explain.
Yes, I call it undernutrition without malnutrition. That just means low calories, but the diet's...
That's why I like CRON, caloric restriction with optimal nutrition. I think that sounds much, much better than undernutrition without malnutrition, because people are going to confuse what the hell that is, obviously.
So adjusted that you're not lacking in any essential materials, such as amino acids, essential fatty
Such as amino acids and essential fatty acids.
Vitamins and minerals.
And what supplements would you take with the diet, sort of vitamin supplements?
Well, with this diet, supplements aren't really necessary, but I generally take some extra vitamin E and C and beta carotenes, a few things like that. I don't think they're a critical part of the diet.
Would you say was the diet a anti-free radical diet?
In the sense that low calorie intake will upregulate the natural occurring free radical scavengers or inhibitors in the body. Yes, it is an anti-free radical diet. And also on a low-calorie diet, you produce less. So it's anti-free radical in those two ways. You upregulate their antagonist, and you downregulate their production.
Don't worry about it. I wonder if you could explain in layman's terms. You okay? It's all right. I wonder if you could explain.
Sound okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. In your book, though, you had quite not a long, but a reasonably long list of supplements that you took, didn't you?
I had quite a long list of supplements in my earlier book, Maximum Lifespan,
Right.
and less in the later book, The 120-Year Diet. It's not that I'm particularly...
I do believe Maximum Lifespan to be the better of the two books, actually. But one should, of course, come to a better understanding of things by reading other authors, by reading, a textbook on nutrition, understanding how nutrition works, understanding how exercise works, things of that nature. You can't just go by what one author says. But, yes, this is, in my opinion, an interesting and scientifically proven means that would probably extend lifespan in humans.
supplements, but the benefit derived from supplements especially kind of schedule things like oddball antioxidants and so forth. The benefit derived from them is at best marginal, and
some of those oddball antioxidants like coenzyme Q10 and alpha-lipoic acid have been found to be very, very, very potent at preserving and ameliorating health conditions. So keep that in mind. That's why you have to educate yourself. You have to look at more than one source of information. And we continue.
By any order of magnitude, far less than you get from caloric restriction itself. So I don't like to emphasize those as though, well, we don't want to restrict calories, so let's take the supplements.
And that's the problem. It's not about not restricting the calories and taking the supplements. You have to do both. It's also like you have to exercise. You have to not smoke. You have to brush your teeth. You have to floss. You have to do things to be healthy, okay? That's what people need to understand. So that's the problem, I think. I think the reason he wasn't promoting the use of supplements was he didn't want people thinking you could supplement and not get the caloric restriction. Now, this is funny. He's going to talk about Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw in a bit, because he got very mad that Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw were promoting the use of supplements and not diet. And when I go into Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw, I'll probably have to make at least one good heavy video about them. But Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw have also been very big inspirations to me. Their book, Life Extension, A Practical and Scientific Approach, is indispensable to anybody trying to learn about these things.
Won't work.
And yet Dirk Pearson and Sandy say that you can take the supplements, you can burn off the body, the fats, and you can eat whatever you like.
Dirk Pearson and Sandy say that, but let them show you some animal survival curves that prove that. There's no evidence whatever from animal studies supporting anything that they say.
Could you explain in layman's terms what a free radical is?
A free radical is an oxygen atom with an unshared electron, so that it is very hyperactive and will grab onto any tissues in order to complete its electron shell, so to speak. And it will immobilize tissues or anything that it gets a hold of. Damages DNA, damages cell membranes, and so forth.
I wonder if you could ask you to do that again. And maybe if you know the analogy that we have free radical damage because of oxygen and water, our cells rust in very simplistic terms. If you could say that. Remember, our audience aren't scientific.
A free radical is sort of an oxygen atom with one of its electrons unstuck. It's a little bit like rusting. And so this hyperactivated oxygen atom is trying to fill up its shell, and it grabs onto anything in sight. So it'll grab onto a tissue here and a tissue there and immobilize them. This could be DNA strands or cell membranes. So it immobilizes anything that it touches, especially bodily parts or fluids or cells.
Is there a point in our lives where we have a natural sort of anti-free radical system within the body does that start oxidizing as well, so that it works, we start rusting as we get older?
There is a natural occurring free radical antagonist system in the body. We produce so-called free radical scavengers, which try to mop up these excess free radicals. It isn't that free radicals are entirely bad, because they are also involved in many essential chemical reactions. They kind of start things. But you don't want them to be in excess. So there's a balance between the production of free radicals and their neutralization.
What causes the harmful effects of the free radicals? I mean, I believe it's if it becomes, for example, in contact with a molecule of polyunsaturated fat that causes free radical damage. I mean, there are things we're taking now which we're told are healthy, but in actual fact are very harmful.
Well, the free radicals attack about anything that's around. They'll attack proteins, fats, polyunsaturated fats, DNA and other tissues, and they form insoluble compounds with them so that then they can't be metabolized very well.
Is there any indication that the diet, I mean, are there any other sort of regimes one can follow other than calorie restriction that will also prolong lifespan? That there is any good scientific evidence?
We now know, although I do think that mild caloric restriction plays a role, but there are other regimes. People that will watch my video, which I'll leave a link to, it'll be at the top of the description, about how to really extend lifespan. We know that following a nutrient-dense, high plant content diet, high in legumes, whole grains, and especially high in vegetables. Now, I do think that there might be a mild degree of caloric restriction that plays a role, but it seems that it's nutrient density and phytonutrient density at that. But let's let Dr. Walford continue here.
There's no scientific evidence that anything besides calorie restriction will, to any substantial degree, retard aging and prolong maximum lifespan. Average lifespan, which is another thing you can prolong by exercise and kind of general good health habits, by not smoking, but you will not budge the maximum lifespan set for our species, which is 110 years.
What's the point beyond that? I mean, you talk in your book about 600 years as a total maximum lifespan. If we could actually, live that long, maybe we can explain that.
Could our species ever become truly immortal and live thousands of years? Well, let's say that if you stopped all aging and stopped all diseases by some miraculous way, what would happen? If we still had accidents at the same rate that we have today, about 5% of deaths today are accidental deaths, being struck by an automobile or whatever. If we still had those at 5%, then how long would people live if nothing else killed them? The survival curve would come to zero at about 600 years. So that would be the most we could ever live if we still had accidents. If accidents are decreased from 5% to 1%, then you could push it out a little longer. But there's no prospect of a truly immortal, godlike race.
What do you think, is it going to be a quantum leap that takes us beyond 120 years to the 600?
Beyond 120 years, well, that was a conservative estimate in my book, The 120-Year Diet. Actually, if one started at 18 or 20 and did it very rigorously, the population curve would terminate about 140 to 150. Beyond that would depend on learning more about the fundamental processes of aging. One of the ways to learn that is by studying the mechanism whereby caloric restriction has all of these global effects, decreases disease, keeps all the tissues younger longer, and pushes lifespan out. If we could understand the basic mechanism behind that, then maybe we could operate directly to live much longer. Yes, I think that we'll get beyond the 120 or 150-year caloric restriction deal by further basic advances in the science of aging.
What would those advances be? What do you think the best bet is?
The best bet probably has something to do with DNA repair, free radical metabolism, or...
And these are things that are being worked on with the epigenetic processes. And also, that's also why I really encourage people to read Dr. Levine's book, True Age. I really do think that people need to read Dr. Levine's book and also look into her work. It's very important to understand what's going on in regards to the epigenetic stuff. I also recommend people read Dr. Joel Wallach's book, Epigenetics. And I think these are all very important things to understand because epigenetics is where it's at right now as far as retarding the aging process.
Hormonal regulation.
Why does free radical, why does diet restriction seem to be the only hope at the moment? Do we know why eating less food makes us live longer?
Diet restriction is the only hope at the moment because that's the only thing that has been proven to work in any animal species. We don't know why it works. It influences many things. It keeps the immune system younger longer. It increases the DNA repair ability.
That's what's interesting. They keep saying they don't know why it works. That's what's funny about the scientific things. They do know why it works. They just don't know exactly why it works, and they probably won't ever know exactly why it works. But the bottom line is that it actually does work. And that's what's important to remember, is that it actually does work.
Decreases free radical production, decreases damage from free radicals. So it kind of does so many things beneficially that you can't select out which one is operating.
Now you, obviously, your personal choice as you follow this diet, would you recommend it as the sort of pathway for the future?
I would recommend this diet as the pathway to the future until something that's proven to work and that's easier to do or better comes along.
Right. Someone said to me, I think it was Dirk, when I saw him, that in societies like the Tibetan monks and Buddhists where they do eat,
people always bring up these people that starve themselves and are not eating nutrient-dense foods as examples. And it's funny because you can't just starve yourself and hope to live longer. It doesn't work that way. And I always find this hilarious when people do this.
they restrict your diet. There's no proof that they actually do live longer than average.
They don't eat a selected, highly nutritious diet. It's
Maybe you
just-
could say the Buddhists.
The Buddhists don't eat particularly highly nutritious or selected diet. The real calorie restriction has to be very carefully adjusted. You can't just eat less rice or something and get away with it.
Would it be easy for the layman to follow? If they bought your book and they decided to go for it, would they also need the medical tests as well? Would they have the backup that you obviously had to follow the dietary regime?
The medical tests are not critical. Those are just to keep you interested and promote your interest. If you really...
What I think is interesting is people need to understand this is a calorie-restricted diet. Long-term caloric restriction has been proven safe many times on. Obviously, drastic or starvation levels of caloric restriction are not safe. And that is another reason that I do like the Zone diet or South Beach diet as examples of diets that are going to give you the proper amounts of fatty acids, proteins, and things like, while continuing to have a caloric restriction.
follow it well.
Metformin is one of the most commonly...
I thought it might be fun to leave people on, just what is the CRON diet? What's the definition of the CRON diet from some robot voice? And that'll be the end of this video.
The CRON diet, calorie restriction with optimal nutrition, is a nutrient-rich, reduced-calorie diet developed by Roy Walford, Lisa Walford, and Brian M. Delaney. The CRON diet involves calorie restriction in the hope that the practice will improve health and retard aging, while still attempting to provide the recommended daily amounts of various nutrients. Other names include CR diet, longevity diet, and anti-aging plan. The Walfords and Delaney, among others, founded the CR Society International to promote the CRON diet. The CRON diet was developed from data Walford compiled during his participation in Biosphere 2. Proponents of the CRON diet believe that everyone has what they call a set point, a weight, specific to an individual, at which each naturally stays when they eat their usual daily diet. Proponents believe that this set point is determined through heredity and childhood eating habits. Proponents recommend that adherents remain 10-25% under their set point, suggesting that this is necessary for the diet to be maximally effective. A guideline that proponents use to determine an individual's set point is to measure that person's body fat content. Proponents state that this should be 10-15% for females and 6-10% for males. Proponents suggest the use of skin fold test tools. They specifically recommend the fatometer, certain digital scales, densiometry, and/or bioelectrical impedance analysis to determine the body fat content. Proponents then use the current weight and body fat content to determine the goal weight below the set point, and plan and follow a preliminary diet until the goal weight is reached. Next, the proponent determines the level of caloric restriction they wish to implement in their regular eating pattern. Proponents recommend a goal of restricting intake by 20%. The actual daily amount eaten depends on the adherent's basal metabolic rate, BMR. A common daily intake is 1,800 calories per day. The Walfords propose 3 meals in their book, but variation is possible. Adherents can vary the number of meals they eat per day in order to fit their schedules. Typically, this is achieved by combining calorie-dense and calorie-lean foods in different ways. Proponents also use supplements, which refers to vitamin pills as well as certain high-nutrition foods, which are necessarily calorie-lean. The Walfords describe these foods as nutrient superchargers. Examples include kombu, brewer's yeast, wheat bran, wheat germ, shiitake mushrooms, non-fat dry milk, soybeans, and tofu. These nutrient superchargers are used frequently to boost meals' nutritional density. The Walfords propose that adherents eat 3 meals per day. They suggest that adherents cook 8 meals on a specific day of the week, and then freeze these meals to use during the entire week. They refer to this process as the quantity cook and freeze option, and the meals themselves as one-a-day mega meals. They suggest that adherents use 2 free choice recipes for the other 2 courses per day. Adherents may compose their own meals. The Walfords caution that such meals must be planned exactly and contain all the required nutrients. There are computer tools available to plan meals, including the official Dr. Walford's Interactive Diet Planner and the unofficial Chronometer.